So let's look at riding the market versus this type of an indexing strategy which offers a growth floor and a growth ceiling. So if we look at the lost decade, January 1, 2000 through 12/31/09, and if we actually started with $1 million and rode the market, its downs, its ups, we would have finished the decade on 12/31/09 with your million only being worth $908. Whereas if we adopted an indexing strategy to the market with a growth floor of 0 and a ceiling of 12, that million would have actually grown to $1.6 million, creating over a $724,000 difference in value. No sleepless nights of these down markets, but when the markets really roar, you get 12%. Look at this difference, though, very significant. We also tested this during the Great Depression decade of 1930 to 39, and again, starting with $1 million, looking at that first 3-year period from 1930 to 1932, our million would only be worth $390. But if we hung on to the end of the decade and didn't sell out, we almost came back to that original $1 million value. Now, following our approach with a 0% interest floor and a 12% ceiling, even during the Great Depression decade, the million would have grown to almost $1.6 million, creating almost a $600,000 difference in value. But when the market bottomed in 1932 at $390, we still would have been around our million. Now, everyone, this also doesn't take into account the costs of this type of strategy. We're not paying attention to taxes at this point. We're only showing you the example of raw returns. Now, when we think about the market, and this goes all the way back again for a number of years, you can see all the volatility represented by these dots. This is the down movement in the market during the year. The bar chart represents where the market actually finished. So the indexing strategy removes the downside, but smooths out the returns, taking away, again, your upside potential. You'll remember that the one thing we proved in the chart, that if you can stomach the ups and downs, the volatility of the S&P with dividends over time, it has created historically pretty exciting returns. The indexing strategy just minimizes volatility. So if we look at it over time and the percentage of every decade of when the markets went up, these numbers are obviously, I think, very surprising to most people. So the key questions, if you could capture between, let's say, 10 to 12% of all the up markets only, if down markets didn't affect you, and you could lock in those gains, guaranteed by some of the largest insurance companies in the U.S., if it all grew tax deferred, guaranteed under Internal Revenue Code Section 72E1, if distributions came out tax-free under 72E5C, and you had ready access to the cash, if you could have all of that, what percentage of your low to moderate risk portfolio and your annual savings would you allocate to such an asset class? And most people seem to indicate a pretty high percentage of not only their low to moderate risk portfolio, but annual savings. Now, why consider an indexed universal life policy to adopt this type of approach? Because we do get potentially tax-free growth. We get non-IRS reportable tax-free income when we pull the money out of the policy, an income tax-free death benefit. It's not subject to the new Medicare tax, and there's no required minimum distributions. We have flexible premiums, long-term growth potential, as I've described, and death benefit. This is a life insurance policy, and it offers substantial liquidity. So, with respect to retirement planning, if we think about how much capital you need at retirement, one of the ways to secure that future is by adopting an indexing strategy.